Hello there, fellow humans, and welcome to the Object 140, and this thing does need a buff. Now, why do I say that? Let's have a look. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. As first of all, let's look at the stats of this vehicle and compare it to a couple of other tier 10 mediums, and then let's talk about what should be done to make this tank relevant again. Now, the main problem with the Object 140 isn't that it's a bad tank on its own. The problem is that compared to all the other options that you have at tier 10, there is simply no point of playing this vehicle over, let's say, a T22 medium, for example, or even a T62A, because if you look at the T62A back here, it has better penetration, better aim time, better accuracy, and also effective power-to-weight ratio, which is better, and also a slightly better traverse speed. So, essentially, the 62A is just overall a better tank with also 1 degree of more gun depression, which is relatively sad because that means that the Object 140 isn't different to the 62A, it's just worse, especially also because the turret armor in the 62A is better as well. Obviously, the hull of the Object 140 is sloped slightly more, however, that doesn't really matter. Obviously, the cupolas on top of this thing are very, very easy to be penned. So overall, on paper, it seems like a decent tank, but once you start playing the game, once you start playing it, you end up with a tank that, well, can't really do anything and doesn't have anything that makes it special. Let's now get into the battle with the Object 140, and what you can immediately see is that we have two of the worst type of player on our team, and that is mediums and lights that go city. If you see that, then you guaranteed know that they're not good players at that point. That is simply my experience at this point, and not even platoon, that's weird. But anyway, they're gonna do that, and the enemies are in the city, so that's gonna be fine. Now, the problem with the Object 140 is that it used to be absolutely amazing. It used to be, essentially, back in the day, the best tank at tier 10, the best medium at least, and the early tournaments were pretty much Object 140 and IS-7. And the IS-7's back, kind of. The Object 140, not so much, because the thing is, this tank now lacks character, as in, the 62A is overwhelmingly better at everything else, which is obviously not great. Now, getting killed by Progetto is also not great, but he's also shooting heat for some reason, but that's normal these days. Yep, he is shooting him heat indeed. Alright, now, gonna unload on the... get rid of the Sheridan first, because that Progetto shouldn't be much of a problem. He's firing heat, so he's like handicapping his own alpha damage. Congratulations on that, mate. Very nice. Now, obviously, how do you not even pen then with heat? Anyway, there we go. Got rid of him. Now, obviously, the tank is still capable. Obviously, that is no doubt true. The tank is still very much capable of delivering good, if not great, battles. However, there's simply no reason to get this vehicle at all, because obviously the 62A is better at everything. Unfortunately, one thing you have to consider on the T54 is that the gun leading to the Object 140 is the stronger one of the two. So I would definitely recommend getting the Object 140 gun on the T54 before getting the 62A one, because obviously 62A one does have 18mm penetration. However, it is a lot less accurate and has a lot less DPM, so therefore the Object 140 gun is the better one. Now, and that's the thing. The Object 140 has nothing that makes it outstanding over the 62A. It's only 5 kilometers an hour more top speed, but even then, the mobility, the overall speed of the 62A is higher. So, how do you balance this thing when it's 62A, but pretty much worse at everything? Now, obviously, you don't want to overdo it either, because it is already somewhat fine. You know, 3,500 DPM, that's good. Now, if you give it armor on the turret, you can't really, because it has 2 massive cupolas on top. So, that is probably never going to work. And what is also not going to work is me, because now I'm going to have to get out of this FV. And I have no idea what the Jaeger is doing, but get out of here. Now, the FV can't clip me, ideally. Well, he can, actually. So, now it is time to disappear as fast as possible. And our boy over there is in the city, which is nothing new. But anyway, let's go for it. He's going somewhere, certainly. So let's now try to disappear. Now, obviously, the FE 4005 is a Centurion hull, so mobility is decent, but obviously not enough to catch a Object 140 going at 55 kilometers an hour. And that's really the problem. If you make it faster, you have the Leopard. If you make it more well-armored, you have the 50M. If you give it a better gun, you have the Leopard again. So what do you do with this vehicle? If you give it more gun depression, you have an M60. So basically, whatever you do to this tank, it is not gonna, I think, ever go back to where it has its own special thing, right? So what I would do to this vehicle is give it a degree or two more gun depression to keep at least that in line with the 62A, to have some quality there. But obviously it's a Russian tank, so you can't give it too much. So like 7 degrees is already stretching it for a Russian tank most of the time, especially one with a flat turret like this one. So giving it more hull armor would be an option, but then again you headbutt with the T-22 medium and that one side. So yeah, it's this thing's really in a pickle, where whatever happens to it, it is unfortunately never going to be as relevant as it once was, even though it still has the amazing DPM and also very good mobility for what it has. It is unfortunately, because of the way it's balanced, not that relevant anymore. And now we're 1v1 against an FV, which can obviously clip me and is going to try to push me, ideally, if he knows what he's doing. He's going to try to push me here. So I'm going to have to try to avoid that as much as possible. Because obviously he needs 2 shots to kill me. I need 2 shots to kill him. But obviously his 2 shots are a lot faster than mine. So we're going to have to try to play around this bridge here, ideally. And go down. Yeah, I mean, if he's a good player, he's going to come down this way, but I'm not going to assume so. Where is he? No. Oh, hello. There we go. He wasn't a good player. Okay, 312. That is either 1 shot or death. And it is death. Okay, he shot once, which means he only has 2 left, I think. But 35 HP. It's not going to do much for him. Just peek again. Come on. Be a nice boy. Peek me again. Now, obviously, over 4,000 damage already here, which is fantastic for a vehicle like this. And despite having 2 non-participant mediums, basically, it did work out beautifully. That's the Object 140. 5,000 damage. It's not a great tank anymore, by any means. And it's not special anymore. And I don't think it is worth grinding. However, as always, it can perform really well. Now, what we've already established is basically it can still work very well. However, it is relatively bland and doesn't have anything outstanding about it. What is outstanding, though, is my channel members. So thank you to those that are supporting me. And if you also want to support the channel, the join button is down there. Next to the subscribe button, obviously. Now, what I would do to this tank, and, well, first of all, obviously, what would you do with the Object 140? Would you keep it as it is? Would you change something? If so, what would you change? Put it in the comments. And what would I change is, well, no matter what you do, essentially, you're going to bring it in conflict with some other tank, except for one thing. That's the DPM. It is already at 3,500 with the gun rammer. Now, what if we bump that up to 4,000, or close to 4,000, obviously using the gun rammer, not stock. So if you have 4,000 DPM with a gun rammer on a tier 10 medium tank, that would be very strong. Now, obviously, giving it 500 more DPM just out of the blue would be not great, obviously, because it wouldn't do much for bad players playing it, but it would certainly make it a lot more attractive for a strong player or a experienced player. Now, how do we offset that? How do we still not make it a bit too much? Because obviously increasing DPM by 500 is quite a lot. Now, if that is too much, then what I would do, it's quite simple, is I would reduce the front armor. It's, I think, currently like 100 or 120. So reduce that down to about 80 to 70 millimeters of frontal armor. So basically that you get less bounces and that you have a essentially lower alpha damage, lower mobility, better turret armor, Leopard 1, essentially to balance it somewhere along those lines, because obviously the 62A already has its own niche there. What the hell did I just shoot? Heat. Yeah, that's... I'm complaining about the Progetto shooting heat, and then I'm doing it myself. Because the thing is, you have the rate of fire advantage over a lot of mediums already. Like an STB, like an M40, like an E50M. You have that already. But you don't have any advantage over the 62A. 62A is a relatively strong tank. Now, it's nothing outstanding, obviously, as well, because of the lack of gun depression, hull armor, and also only 310 alpha damage, where others have 350. However, it is definitely a strong vehicle. So what I would do to the Object 140 is to offset that by giving it that big, chunky DPM. Obviously, it also has worse penetration than the 62A by 5. So you already have a quite big difference there. So let's bump up the DPM. Let's make it something special. Obviously, it's not trying to make it OP here. It's not going to be. The one problem that is going to create is that it might make it too strong for good players. Like a Leopard 1, for example, is already a very, very strong vehicle if you're a good player, because you can use that gun and that mobility to your advantage. However, the Object 140 won't have that amount of mobility at its disposal that, for example, a Leopard has. So you do still have all those downsides in place without overdoing anything, pretty much. Now, what would you do to the Object 140? Would you buff the DPM to around 3,800 stock? Would that make sense? Or do you think that is a very bad idea? And obviously you do have to do something to offset that. Maybe also reduce the penetration by 10 millimeters, something like that. But just something that makes this thing special again, and not just a worse 62A that isn't worth grinding. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. See you for the next one. I'm probably not going to play the 140 that much, but if you want to play with me, I do stream every Saturday on YouTube. And I'll do Subletoons, so if you're interested in that, join as well. And that's it. See you for the next one.